So when did you first know you wanted to write?
When I was a teenager, I had my grand dream. I was going to be a comic book artist. That was the goal. That was the dream. But to draw comics, you have to have stories to draw. So I started writing stories so I would have something to draw. And other artist friends of mine started asking me to write for them. And that was when I started realizing, hey, I might be better at the writing part of it than the art part of it. Because my art is okay, but it's not my comic book, like the drawing, the panel to panel, the storytelling. My art was not 100, it was not professional level. And a friend of mine actually sat down and said, it was one of those tough love moments that, I guess that was just the right day that I could hear it. And a friend of mine sat down and said, look, basically what I just said, but he's like, have you ever thought about just focusing on one? He says, right now you're trying to do both, the writing and the art, and you're splitting your focus. He said, have you ever thought about just focusing on the writing? And so I tried that, and within 2 years, I was writing comics for a publisher. So obviously there was something to what he was saying. So that was how I started. I started with writing comics. And then from there, short stories happened in a novel. And a lot of times it's just can I do it? I wrote my first novel just because I wanted to see if I could do it. And I wrote this novel. It was horrible. It was absolutely terrible. But I finished it, And as you know, finishing a book is the greatest motivation to write another one because you feel that sense of accomplishment. And so I did another one. The second book I wrote, the second novel, ended up being the first published novel. So I couldn't have done that without writing the really crappy one that I wrote. So when I was a teenager, that's when the ball got rolling. I was in my mid to late 20s, I guess, when closer to 30 when my first book come out. So, I'm doing the math in my head. Yeah, I was in my 30s when my first book came out. Yeah. From there it got a little bit easier, after the first one comes out. Because, when you go up and talk to publishers or editors and you say, hi, I'm a writer, and they go, oh, what have you written? And you go, well, I'm working on my first, and blah. You can almost see the glaze go up over their eyes. But when they go up and they say, what have you done? And you slap a book in their hand, you've bought yourself a couple of minutes. There's something about, they finished something. And that's a big deal to publishers. And so once you've got one book, you use that book it becomes your resume, and books lead to other books. So that was a long-winded answer. Sorry.
That's fine. As long or short as you need it is fine. So tell us a little about Snow and the inspiration behind you writing it.
Snow is it's kind of like my love letter to the TV shows and books that featured cops and PIs of the 70s and 80s, where it was more about the action and the chase and the characters more so than plot. Not that plot's not important, but when you're doing a TV show, you're doing 20 something a year. Not all the plots are gold, but the characters keep you invested, keep you coming back. And so Snow got its start, and I had a couple of posters there on the wall. Snow got its start when a publisher contacted me. They were looking to start up a new venture where they were going to do ebooks only, but they were going to do ebook novellas, little short 30,000 word novellas. And so I was hired to come up with a series that could be part of that line. And I'd had the idea for what became Snow in my head for a while, at least that opening bit, which is the opening scene of the first book, had been in my head for a while. The character wasn't quite fleshed out. Like, he even had a different name at the time. I went through a couple of iterations before I settled on Snow as his name. And so I did this. I wrote the first one. That publisher put it out. I wrote the second one, and it sat and sat and sat, and eventually the publisher went out of business, and it took some time. But when I got my rights back, I didn't want to retool it because most publishers at that time were not doing novellas. It was everything had to be 60, 70, 90,000 words. And I really didn't I liked the format I was writing in, this novella format. So I self-published through my independent publisher, the first one, the second one, and then it just kept going. And right now we have 5 books out. I'm working on 6 now. Six books will make up series 1, and each book is a standalone story. You will get some resolution to the A plot in each story, but there's a big story that's run through all 6. So if you read all 6, you get a big story. Right. But if you just read, if you could just pick up book 3 without having read books 1 and 2 and still get a story. And still get, so yeah, because I really hate leaving people. I hate reading a novel and get to the end of it, it goes to be continued, and there's no wrap up, no resolution of anything. So I really wanted to make sure that the A story, the main plot of each book, is resolved. And then I usually do an epilogue chapter. Here's what's coming, and it leads you into the next one. So if you want to go to the next one, it leads you there. But if you don't, then you've still got a whole story and you're good to go. And so they're very action oriented. Car chases, fist fights, gunfights, but they're also very heavily character based, getting to know the characters, spending time with the characters, doing things, because Snow is surrounded by, he has his grandfather as a character, his father, his brother, he has a couple of friends that are all kind of circling around him. And so they're not all in every book, but when you need them, other characters come in. And so the interactions between the characters is probably the first and foremost thing that I look at when I'm putting these together, is how do all these, what are the characters up to? Then I drop them into whatever plot, and we kind of see how they kind of work together to get through the plot. So they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun that way. They're a lot of fun to write, and they're short. They're almost like short, like TV shows. They're short, to be pretty easily read, fairly quickly. And then, so we put those out in ebook and paperbacks. I wish I had one handy. They're very small paperbacks, and ebooks and audiobooks. And then every three of them that get completed, we collect them into a trade. So if you want to buy the collected version, you can get 3, and then we put those out in paperback, ebook, audiobook, and hardcover. Okay. So it gives options to however people want to read them. So it's a lot of fun. I'm like I said, I'm working on book 6. I've got books 7, 8, and 9 planned.
Oh wow.
Very loose plots. I know the generic plot. This happened.
Right.
I'm not really a great outliner. I can't do a very deep outline, because when it comes time to write the book, I feel like I've already done it. So I like that sense of discovery that following the characters will give you. So I kind of come up with my plots, and I go, okay, we start here. First thing we got to do is get to here. And so I follow the character to see how they get there. And, as your characters can take you, on these long absolutely. And that's part of the fun of it. You learn a lot about the characters, about how they get you there. And so I enjoy that aspect of it too. And I've had some really wonderful things come out of that. Like I had all 6 books plotted out, I knew what was going to happen, the big thrust of each book. But something happened when I wrote book 3 that made me have to change books 4, 5, and 6, because something big happened in 3, but it only happened because I was listening to what the characters were doing. It made 4, 5, and 6 better, I think, but it was just something that I hadn't thought of until I got to follow the characters and get to know them and saw how they how they interacted and what they did that made this change happen. It took one character off the board. It made another character who was a minor character, who was always intended to be a minor character, and made that minor character a big character. So these were interesting things that I only got to because I trusted the characters to get me there. So, but yeah, so they're fun. I have a good time with them. So far, mostly, wonderful reviews from people. And the first book, Snow Falls, is the one that has sold the most because a lot of people just have picked the first one up. And yeah, people seem to like it. I have a wonderful audio narrator, who Stuart Goofy, who is doing fantastic work on the audios, and those have been well received. And as you can see, like I said, I got some cover art here. The one over here, this is the first 6 books all have this image.
Okay.
Just with a different color. That was kind of my branding. As we go into books 7, 8, et cetera, Jeffrey Hayes will be doing the art on those. The art for this one here was Dennis Calero. So I've been very fortunate with some beautiful cover art. And so, yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying writing the characters.
Good. So for beginning writers who are thinking about, well, they write, but they haven't published a book yet, some advice would you give them?
Set a goal for yourself. I always say this because, if you know why you're writing, if you know what your goal is as a writer, you can adjust yourself accordingly. This was something I learned the hard way because, not everybody writes for the same reason. Some people write with the goal to just finish a book and put it out there. They don't care if it sells. They just want the book out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's one, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's some people write as a hobby. There are some people whose goal is to be a New York Times bestselling author. There are other people whose goal is to start their own publishing company. All of those goals are absolutely valid. There's nothing wrong with any of those, but how you get to each is different, the path that you take. So if you set your goal early, and that's not to say you can't change your goal, but if you set your goal and set attainable goals too, don't just jump to my first goal is to be a New York Times bestselling author, because that's just frustration. Set attainable goals, finish your first book, then once that's out, how do I get that book published? And these days there are a multitude of ways to get books published. When I first was published, self-publishing was not an option. Well, it was an option, but it was one that was looked down on.
Right.
At that point in time, it had not become acceptable like it is today. So self-publishing wasn't really an option. So I had to go out and pitch, to publishers. Here's my book. Here's my novel. And I did that for quite a number of years after it was finished. And it took about 6 years before I found a publisher that said, yes, we'll take it. And I signed with them, and they're no longer in business, but I signed with them, and it turned out to be a horrible experience. On my end, it was just horrible. Excuse me. They were not easy to work with. There was just a lot of problems. And so, but even with all that said, I had a book in my hand that I could use to get other work. So I took that book and I talked to other publishers, and because the other publishers and readers, they don't really care about the behind the scenes stuff. Like, readers don't care that the publisher was crap, or that this was happening or that was happening. The publisher is like, is the book any good? Or the reader's like, is the book any good? And so I took the book and I used the book to get other work with other publishers. And so that helped. So as bad as that experience was, something good came out of it because I got other work, and so, I can trace my, I can kind of trace my path. Like, Evil Ways led to me getting the Lance Starr books. The Lance Starr books led to me getting Domino Lady, which is just a poster over there. And so, yeah, using those books as a stepping stone. So each of those were goals I had. The first goal was I want to be published. So I met that goal, even though it didn't turn out how I wanted. I met that goal. There's a lot of success there. There's that, that feeling when you open up the package and you hold your book in your hand for the first time. Exactly. You're smiling now just thinking about it. Yeah, same way. You can't wipe. That's a grin. You can't wipe that grin off your face for days. It's a wonderful feeling. So even though the experience after that was not good with that publisher, that feeling was enough to make me do it again. And so setting those goals is very important. If you set the goals and you make the plan of how to get to those goals, it'll help you a lot. And I didn't do that up front. I floundered a little. Not to say that it was a bad experience, but I got out of it. There was a short period where I got out of writing my novels and started doing a bunch of anthology work because people were asking, and I hadn't yet learned how to say no, or I can't do it, or this doesn't fit. And so that ended up taking up a lot of my time. And I don't say that badly because those were all great experiences and I learned a lot doing that, but it knocked me off my goal. Like my goal was going this way, and that kind of was a little detour off of it. So I don't regret it, but it did take me longer to reach the next goal because I didn't have a plan. So make a plan, set a plan, have fun with what you're doing. Don't try to write what you think people want to read. Because say if your thing is writing fantasy and you go, oh, nobody's reading fantasy, I'm going to write a bunch of horror. And then you start publishing horror. Then people start only thinking that's what you can do, because that's hard too. You get typecast. And then you could end up, if you become popular, you could end up spending the rest of your career writing stuff that you don't really enjoy writing. And then writing just becomes a job and you might not enjoy it as much. So, write the kind of things that you enjoy, have fun with it, and set goals. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Set goals, cool. You kind of went into my next question. Some things you learned that you weren't aware of when you first started publishing?
Marketing.
Yeah.
That you have to learn how to. I was very shy when I was younger, very shy, very, introverted. My thought was, I was looking at how writing and publishing used to be. Publisher took the book and the publisher did all this stuff. Well, that's not the case anymore. The publisher doesn't do marketing, very little marketing. They do no promote, they don't send you on book tours. They don't set up interviews for you. They don't do any of that stuff. And so I had to learn how to do all that myself. And, so a lot of that was very self-taught. And so, and I've been doing it a while, so I've picked up tricks and things along the way. But marketing was a big one. Learning how to deal with reactions from people. Not everybody's going to like your work. And the people that love your work will never tell you they love your work, in most cases. The people that hate your work are all too happy to tell you they hate your work. And so learning how to deal with that was difficult for me, because I didn't like the idea of confrontation, and certainly then the next big advice they give you is, well, don't argue with them. So you just kind of have to sit there and take it and go, I understand. Thank you. But I got to realizing, even if they didn't like it, if it still did something to them to make them take the time to sit down and write a review, the book must have touched something.
Right. And
so my thing was just, when I get a review, whether good or bad, I don't argue with them. That's never good. But I thank everybody that leaves a review. Thank them for their time. Because, they didn't have to say anything, So the fact that the book kind of motivated them to sit down and type up a review, I think that's incredible, And so, so learning how to deal with all that, learning how to, take your hits and kind of go, all that was stuff that's self-taught. And there's other things too. I mean, I took a couple of writing classes when I was working on Evil Ways, which was my first novel. And those were helpful, but a lot of my writing stuff is self-taught. It's like, or stuff I've learned from dealing with editors. You shouldn't do it this way. Can you try to do it this way? Or reading other writers' stuff, or just talking to other writers. That's another great thing of being a published writer. I've got to meet so many other writers, and we all have different ways of doing things. And if I ever get in a point where something's not working, I have this group of writers that I know that I can pop an email off to, or make a phone call and go, let me run something past you. How does this sound? And I can get some feedback from them that helps me, do what I need to do. And so the networking is especially wonderful. And I'm hoping you see the same thing, that there's a lot of other writers out there, and writers are wonderful about helping and promoting, or at least supporting other writers, especially down in the indie side of things, where it seems to be it's not, I don't see as much of other writers looking at each other like, oh, you're my competition. It's like, we're all in this, we're all down here on this boat together. And so I love the fact that we've got a lot of that, where writers are, I see writers all the time going, hey, check out my buddy's book, or, this writer I know has a new book out this week. You should, take a look at it, and vice versa. And people are doing that back and forth. And I find that wonderful, that sense of community and camaraderie and with the writers. It's been very wonderful.
Good. I find it, when you started out saying about the reviews, I actually would, when I would receive emails, give us a survey on how we've done. I used to never answer them, but I started answering them on purpose, only because I know where I used to work in customer service, it was rare that we got people saying thank you. Mm-hmm. But we always got complaints. We always got the, you did this wrong, I'm angry, et cetera, et cetera. So now I leave, anytime something good happens, I do leave the good, because we do spend more time complaining, mm-hmm. and leaving bad reviews than saying this was actually a good book, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And I as a result, I started doing that too. I make sure I leave reviews now. If I buy a book or read a book, and I do it for other things too. Like, whenever I get the survey, do you want to leave us a survey? Yeah, I will. Excuse me. Because of the same thing. Yeah. I realized that, I was the same way. I wasn't telling people, hey, I loved your book, or hey, I loved your movie, or hey, and so I tried to do that more now, because I realized that from my end, I love it when people tell me that. And it's amazing how just a review that goes, man, this is a great book, can just, it is so uplifting. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of, I don't know about you, but with me, I'm always convinced with every book, oh, they're going to hate this one. Every book I put out, there's this little voice in the back of my head that goes, yep, this will be the one where they realize you don't know what you're doing. So, and I guess that's just human nature. So yeah, so hearing that positive reinforcement is absolutely wonderful. So.
It is. Okay, so last question. If you could sit down and have lunch and conversation with any author, whether they be dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's a good one. I would probably I'm going to pick somebody who's alive, I guess, because it's hard to think about the ones that have passed on, about who would be the good one. I'm a huge fan of Michael Connelly, who writes Harry Bosch novels. Mm-hmm. I would love to pick his brain about how he got started. I know parts of it, that he was a reporter who wrote a book, but I would love to pick his brain about the hurdles he had to get through to get the first Bosch novel published. And because it seems like that first one came out, and man, it's been all uphill. It seems that way. So I'd be curious to hear the behind the scenes, because we often look at other authors, especially the ones that are really successful, and it seems like it's easy for them, but I'm fairly certain that they're probably dealing with the same, issues that we do. And so I'm always fascinated by how people overcome those issues. So I'd love to pick his brain and see what he did different than what I do, or what he did similar to what I did, and that kind of stuff. If it was someone who is no longer with us, just for on a personal reason, I would love to talk to Stephen J. Cannell, who used to do all the TV shows, and he wrote novels as well. I've never met him in person, but we did, right before he died, we did converse back and forth over email. And I would have loved to have met him in person. I've enjoyed so much of his work over the years. It would have been really great to just meet him in person, sit down, have a conversation. And that would have been a good one, because he wrote across everything from TV to movies to books, and it would have been fun to just kind of bend his ear a little bit on what it was like being part of those projects.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this message.
A fast-paced, action-packed book series, Snow, follows Abraham Snow, a spy, on his mysterious and exciting adventures. Snow, available on Amazon, hardback, paperback, ebook, audiobook, and free on Kindle Unlimited. For more information, go to abrahamsnow.com.